Gisela. How are you today?
Good. Long time no see. It's been what, four
Yeah,
days?
maybe. We've got a very special show today. There's a lot happening in life, right? There's a
Mm,
lot happening in the world. And we were having that conversation of, um, we talk about, you always hear about that toxic masculinity out there.
hmm
And we need to stop focusing on that. We need to stop just, zeroing on that issue and talk about that positive masculinity. And there is so much out there. In my belief, in my world, I always feel like the world is more beautiful when it is balanced.
Yeah.
And for me, there is that male-female balance in all of us. And so I feel extremely fortunate. As you know, I have the most incredible men in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that. And I know you feel the same. You feel the same. And you actually, this show today was sparked by Roger Wolsey, wasn't it? You were
Yeah.
having a
So,
conversation.
yeah, I did a show similar to this in my old podcast, partially because several years ago he had posted something about how he wanted to talk about positive masculinity. And I thought, well, I have no idea what that is.
Hmm.
And it was interesting to me that that was such an elusive topic, and that the men that I did know and do know that are, I think, very wonderful humans, I've seen them grapple sometimes with being, I don't know, I want to say comfortable, but willing to embrace themselves as men. There's some hesitation in that that to me seems a bit damaging and untrue. And then in the work that we do with Harmony Voices, there can sometimes be this feeling of not being welcomed to the work. And yet I know you and I both feel very strongly that our liberation is all bound together, that we need men to participate in the work that we're doing. And they are, as you noted, a big part of the balance. And so the idea of having Theo, our newest Gaia Gossip host,
Hmm.
lead some men in a discussion about this, that just felt like a great way to start creating what that invitation can look like, and allowing people to explore that concept together.
Yeah, and when you think about children, as children, there's a lot more, I believe, this was my experience. There was a lot more grace being female. There was a lot more grace to be a little girl and express my emotions. And what
Mm-hmm.
I always witnessed is when it came to the little boys, stop crying, man up kind of thing. And there was this suppression, repression on how do I express myself, and in full emotional way. And
Yeah.
not just, oh, let me knock over all of the blocks and bulldoze through and show that aggressive part of me.
Yeah.
Um, and for the conversations I've had for some of the men in my life, they've talked about, yeah, you know, I couldn't really express that. If I cried, there was something wrong with me. And now we start looking at here's the balance in life. And let's give some grace to men.
Yeah.
Let's give some grace to boys. Um, yeah.
Yeah. When I One of my children is a male, and I found that little boys were often so tender-hearted and healing oriented. And it's a gross generalization, but looking at that, when my child was young and the other little boys that they were close to, and knowing that that was going to be ground out of them, was one of the few times I had a deep rage
Mm.
about the state of the universe, that this tender, caring, healing aspect of their being would be, they would be shamed out of them. And so just to
Mhm.
have places where that can be invited in differently feels really important to me as a human.
Well, I think we should get to it. We've got four amazing men that
Agreed.
are going to speak on that topic of positive masculinity and what exactly does that mean. And we intentionally did a variety of backgrounds, cultural backgrounds too, in this show. And
Yeah.
I have some hopes that we will this will be the first of a few of these shows.
Agreed. Thank
Yeah.
you. Hope you enjoy the show.
Isla and Alicia, thank you so much for having us on Gaia Gossip. And every time I get invited to speak as a quote positive male, I always feel a little bit of imposter syndrome. I'm gonna be honest with you, because I'm deeply in touch with my flaws as a man. So I first and foremost am not coming here to speak as a finished product from the peak of manhood mountain and maturity. This is not what we are here to do. I am here with fellow journeymen in masculine bodies who have endured masculine nurture. And I feel, number one, I've had some kind of confrontation with this idea of toxic masculinity. And number two, want to hold themselves accountable for being positive men in the community and for our families and in the world. And that's what's most important to me. So I'm speaking to you all as a man in process of unpacking and repurposing the things that have been put into my spirit for the better, greater good of my society. And so I just got my brothers here, man. I got Blake Kent, man. I got Paul Rivera. I got Jason Jacobs. We all come to this from different angles. So what I want to do is I want to start out with the confrontation of toxic masculinity before we get into positive masculinity. We're going to go from the gruff to the divine here. All right. And everything I'm gonna ask y'all to do, I'm gonna ask y'all to do within 2 minutes, and I'm gonna ask of myself first. And so I'm gonna talk about the first thing I'm gonna ask all of us. I'm gonna start with myself is a real confrontation with our own toxic masculinity. What did that look like? What did that look like? And so I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna just go across what looked like the screen here. We're just gonna go right across the screen. My own confrontation with toxic masculinity, what I had to unpack is number one, being raised by men who had been killers at some point in time, being raised by veterans. And what that did to me as a boy who was born as an artist. I was tenderhearted. I love horses and drawing pictures, all right? And number two, raised in an environment where gangster rap and thug culture was something that was ubiquitous to me. I swam in these waters. And a lot of it that I had implanted in me came from always fighting for respect and always trying to overcome a heartbreak. The toxic traits that I picked up had everything to do with navigating violence and trying to be effective in having choice with the women that I desired. That was it for me. Because one didn't want to be called a simp in my community, somebody who got taken advantage of by women who had not unpacked their toxicity. And you couldn't be a punk either. It had everything to do, and I put punk in quotation marks, it had everything to do with making sure that other men knew that there were consequences for crossing your boundaries. In that environment, I picked up survival traits that worked. For a little while, these things I picked up were effective. And it wasn't until my journey into manhood that the friction of life had me have real rough choices of whether to let these things go or double down. And on the other side of it was a divinity that I hope I'm embodying more and more every day as a husband, as a father, and as a community member. So that's what my journey looked like. Dr. Paul, you have like this amazing background as an intellectual and as a leader. And I'm sure that that is a thing that sprouted from some gruff waters. You know what I mean? So talk to me about your journey in confronting perhaps what your own toxic masculinity looked like.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Theo. Um, you know, so I'm Latino. My family is all from Latin America. I think one of the biggest things is the weight that comes with that on the expectation of what a man is, what a man does. Always the protector, always strong, never weak. There's nothing worse than seeming weak. Um, I come from a very blue collar background. You know, my family, they're all guys who make their living with their hands, and they're honorable men and they're good men. But there's a very, very particular mindset that comes with that. My story actually, you talk about the battles that you overcome on this journey. Mine starts from when I was a very, very young child. I was about 5 years old, and it's a whole story where basically I was helping my aunt who was preparing for her quinceañera, her 15-year-old birth, her 15s, right? It's kind of like the Latino version of your Sweet 16, right? And I was her dance partner. I was dancing with her until one day when a friend of the family saw me practicing with her and came up and whispered to me in Spanish. He whispered, "Don't you look like a pretty girl dancing?" And he said it in front of my dad. He said it in front of my grandfather. And the fact that neither of them reacted made it really clear that they believed him, that he was right. So this was very much the
Wow.
mentality that went with all of that. I mean, so how did that happen? What happened then? I'd stopped being my aunt's dance partner. I never danced again for about the next 35 years. And then you carry all of that with you, right? The implied masculinity that has to go with all of that. And it's never been who I was. It's never been who I wanted to be. So you talk about me being I went to school for a long time. I was a professor, a diplomat, entrepreneur now. And a big piece of that was sort of me rebelling against sort of that upbringing that I had, right? I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be in a different space. And so much of my journey and the fight and the wrestling with it has been really me finding my space and my place and finding my people, and that's what I hope comes out of some of this conversation today is that the hardest thing for men to do is to find people around whom they can be real. I mean, I don't even want to say, it's not even about being vulnerable. It's about being real. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at. I'll pass the mic over to Blake.
Thank you so much for that, Brother Paul. Brother Blake, looks like you got a background in the armed forces to some degree, man. And I think that that's probably a journey that a lot of men, if we're not directly affected by being and serving in the armed forces, we know somebody who has affected our lives from that place. That's what I can assess from what your bio is. But tell us about your personal journey in confronting whatever your own toxic masculinity looked like and how you probably overcame that, or at least fighting to.
So I grew up on a small farm in Texas, out in the middle of nowhere, and my days were spent, working on fixing fence and taking care of cattle. And I may have interacted with, like friends and whatnot when you'd go to church or like during the school year. So, like a very quiet solitude sort of childhood. So like my male influences were my brother and my dad. My brother was the all-star baseball player, and my dad, very strong businessman and into into his church. And was a Baptist pastor. Me, I was like y'all were talking about love of dancing and things like that. I was the one that would be out in the field by myself singing songs and sit around and be like doing my work, but like in my own little world. And so after high school and whatnot, I joined the Army. It was 2 tours in Iraq, and you definitely come to confront some of those questions of like, what is a man of, what is it to be a man? What is it to be a man of peace? And how do you achieve that in the middle of all of this, like, everything that's happening now and everything that we've done in the years past, where I look at, 2 tours in Iraq and the opportunity to meet so many people and communities that I would have never had a chance to experience, had I not traveled or joined the military, but and how much that affects, I think, that work towards emotional intelligence and that work towards what it is to be a modern man, or a good role model, a good man, a good human.
Absolutely. That's a heck of a journey, man. For those of us who started off as quiet spirited boys, I felt that for sure. Listen, I got my brother here with the cool accent, man. We got our guy that's representing the Maori people, our brother Jason Jacobs, man. And, I know you got a grounding in that deep indigenous tradition, the Maori people, warrior people, folks I deeply respect. And I'm wondering if, did you take that path because there was a way forward in indigenous traditions that would give you a healthy sense of masculinity? And did you have to unpack anything that wasn't necessarily healthy in your upbringing? Go ahead and talk to me, bro.
Yeah, kia ora, Theo. Thank you for that. Tihe mauri ora, te taua mai runga, te taua mai i raro, te taua mai i waho, te taua mai i roto. Kia tau ai te mauri tu, te mauri ora ki te katoa. Tera pēr whakamohiotanga e koe o uranga pono, homi e hui e tae ki e. I just loosely translated in English. This is a blessing. It goes, the life force of us all combined. We summon from above, below, within, from the outside environment to calm and settle the vita inner essence, the well-being of everyone. May your awareness open up your true existence. Be joined together today, united as one. Just touching in on that, Theo and Blake and Paul and our wonderful Humane Voices Foundation. I grew up in a very cultural context. So this blessing is when you always have important discussions such as this. You always come with a container to protect the ones within and the ones you may talk about. So that was a blessing written by a cousin of mine, all around the well-being of women and men, and especially men, and how they turn up in their communities. So I thought I'd just share a little bit of that. But growing up in a wonderful area with a lot of cultural grounding, that didn't mean we didn't have problems and issues around how men show up and how they should contribute to their family and friends. And so even from my lens, it was actually being brought up with a very matriarchal, patriarchal balance in a multicultural setting, but then having to go to school in a single-sex school. And so for me, it was very difficult to have this balance between what we learn collectively, individually, and as people turning up as ourselves. So there were a lot of differences, and that's what I drew on from my Māori culture to be respectful around this positive masculinity as we should place today. Thank you, Theo.
No problem, man. Thank you so much, brothers, for opening up about your personal path. And what I want to know is, like, what was the moment? What was the moment where you said, I've got to confront this thing that I have learned about manhood and force myself to unlearn it? And I think that for me, I'll start off with myself. There was several moments. I had to unpack my rage after a road rage incident where I found myself about to fight a stranger in the middle of traffic. I was about to fight a stranger in the middle of traffic because of how I was driving, and they reacted to how I was driving in a very toxic way. And I was forced to figure out if I was going to go escalation dominance on this person. And I really had to find myself some self-control in that moment, because I knew for one good fact that I could easily take this over the top and find myself in jail. And the route that I took was, I was like, if I get out of this car, it's going to be on. I know how to fight. but I don't know if this person has a gun. And if this person has a gun, I could easily end up dead over something stupid. So my choice was to stay in that car, even though I was part of the problem, you know? And I don't know what alternate universe that I may have avoided with that, but I know I'm here today talking with y'all. And that was where I had to unpack the rage piece of it. And there was also the part, so that was the anger and violence, right? But I also talked about the womanizing piece, if I'm gonna be real with y'all, man. And you know, I ended up destroying a relationship that I had a deep love for somebody for, because of the fact that after having my heart broken, I was forced to be single and didn't realize that in my single ways, I had picked up some habits I couldn't break, or at least I didn't break in time to save the love. And out of heartbreak, a place that I didn't want to be, being a man is almost like we're not allowed to touch unless we having sex. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we're almost in a way, if that human need to be touched uh is like a driving force in our very nature as human beings. The culture of manhood says you can really only get that need met in the bed. And I picked that need up, went down that pathway, and didn't really unpack it till I crashed out. And I had to rebuild that before my current marriage right now. So it's like, those are my two incidents. Dang near getting killed probably in a road rage incident, and destroying a good relationship with habits that I need not have. Those are my seminal incidents. You know what I'm saying? I know that's a little bit vulnerable, but I don't already did a TED talk about this, so I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? If you feel so bold as being vulnerable about the toxic traits, can y'all tell me an incident? I'm going to put you on the spot, Mr. Paul. You know what I'm saying? Was there
All
a
right, I'm here
specific
for it. I'm here
incident
for it.
that was like, I got to unpack this thing I learned about manhood?
I'm here for it. I appreciate you sharing too. I think before I get started, I think one of the really key things that you talked about was heartbreak, you know, and it's a real thing, you know what I mean? And where's the space to talk about that? You know what I mean? That the weight that you carry, the realization that, damn, you know, that was a good thing. And I made choices that put that in the wrong direction, you know? So I appreciate that. I just you saying and talking about that, that's not something that traditionally, historically, culturally, we're allowed to talk about as men. So I appreciate that piece. I'll tell you mine. So I grew up, you know, as I said, in this family where the man is the provider, the man is the caretaker, and the idea is that the woman plays a supporting role. So my journey came at it from sort of the other side. So my field is economics. I'm an economist in international economics in particular. So my work has taken me all over the world, and specifically focusing on developing countries. So here's one of the first things that you learn intellectually, but you kind of have to go out in the world to see it. So one of the things that I believe in the most is the value of wisdom. And wisdom is the knowledge that comes through lived experience, right? You can't go to school to become wise. You have to live your life to become wise, right? So as you go out into the world, and as I've gone out into the world all over the place, everywhere you go, the societies that become better, that become stronger, that become more unified, where the children are healthier and more educated, better nourished, where things thrive, where their economic systems are more sustainable. Those societies are the ones where they have empowered the women. That's what's happened. So when I start thinking about that from my own background and saying, well, I was taught that I'm supposed to be the man, I'm supposed to be the provider, I'm the one who makes everything better. And then to realize that the reality is very, very different around the world. And this is universal. I'm not talking in one place or another. This is universal. Where you have empowered women, where you have allowed women to go to school, to find economic opportunity, to really sort of build up in the freedom of men, actually. Those are the societies that thrive. And so then you got to start thinking about it. Well, then what am I here to contribute? You know what I mean? What's my role? What is my place? And what is maybe not even my business in a lot of ways, you know? So it's really this very profound questioning of not only everything that I'd been taught and everything that I'd been told, but really a profound questioning of how do I want to be? How do I want to behave? How do I want to best enable the world to move forward? Because that's really who I want to be. I want to be the person who helps people become better. I want to be the person who makes the world a better place. And so, you know, I know that that a very good friend asked me to be on this show speaking to you guys, and I know that in part it's because I'm a champion for women. And the truth is that I understand that my role is to, as much as possible, not only level that playing space, but I've seen it. It's data, it's statistics that when we empower women, we are all better off. You know, so I think that the most masculine thing that I can do is hand over the gauntlet sometimes, you know, and find places for those really powerful women in my life to thrive and to carry things forward. And that in that act, that's probably the most masculine thing that I can do.
Gotcha. Was that ever difficult for you? Like, was that it's like something that, like, I'm looking for, you know, like the piece of your journey that like you was confronted with the fact that like I have to change.
I mean, well, no, the piece that was difficult was having my family understand it. And that's the hard piece. So I'm very much, I'm the black sheep in my family. I'm the one who lives a life completely different. And frankly, the cost of me being on this journey, which I am 1,000% convinced is not only the right one for me, but just the right one. The cost of that has been that there is significant distance between myself and my family, because they're, you know, when I see that they're not the champions that I need in that moment, that they're not the ones who are going to support me on this path, that's the choice I've had to make. And honestly, that's been the difficult part, to realize that I am not only different from them, but that my path is going to go in a different way.
That's deep, bro. I appreciate you sharing that with me, man. For sure. Listen, brother Blake, you know, I think that I've heard stories about brothers in the armed forces that had to have some interesting confrontations about what they picked up in the military. But I don't know if that's your story. Was there a moment, was there a seminal event that was very eye-opening for your own path in masculinity that you realized that you had to make a change?
Yeah, I think there was a definitely a defining moment in my second tour in Iraq. That I don't know, that second tour was a tough one all around. I confronted a lot of ways in those ideas that you have of masculinity, and enduring the tough stuff of it, you know, of just the grind of things. And then you know, and you get through all that and you're like, yeah, okay, you know, I'm a tough guy. But then there was an incident that occurred that I was a first responder to, and it just hit me in a completely different way. And from that, started dealing with depression and PTSD and crying. Of all things, guys don't do. Yeah, just crying a lot, and not wanting, like, and not stopping. And it was yeah, that was kind of the eye-opening moment. And then, you know, from that, where do you go from there? My work, I think, you know, after the military, I just stuffed everything back down, and I got back out and continued doing international development work in Africa and Afghanistan and all over the place, doing different work. I joined Peace Corps and was in Kazakhstan for 2 years, and probably the most constructive 2 years of my life. And then, yeah, coming back around to dealing with what all of it, you know, kind of means when you're, I'm not money driven. I'm service driven, and I think that's a big thing guys face as well, is what is the motivations for what you do and how you do it. And so much is put on guys for you make the money, and
Right.
that's your lot in life, and good luck with it.
Right.
But I think that that incident in Iraq actually gave me the it disturbed my little quiet pond enough that you question everything. You question what it is that who you should be in relationships in life, like Theo, what you described, and Paul as well. Like I think those are both very common kind of things. At least I know, I definitely resonates with me as well. And oddly enough, the strongest people that have helped me through a lot of this, or a lot of things in life, have been the matriarch women in my life, the ones that brought us here today for this call, and other leaders that I've had, and that have shown that balance and what it is to carry both your masculinity and femininity, or those elements that are in all of us,
Sure.
honestly and truly.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. My brother went to Iraq, and there's a lot that happened over there for our troops that they come back dealing with. I got a friend of mine who helped me through one of my darkest incidents, who's an Afghanistan vet. So not only do I appreciate y'all for, like, like the bravery that you had to just live through to, like, survive a war, but coming back and trying to make the best of what you learned over there. So I appreciate you for that, bro. And I just want to say, our brother Jason, you've got this background that is deeply culturally rooted. I'm interested in, like, your personal journey. Was there a moment where you confronted your own toxicity and realized that something had to change?
Yeah, thanks for that, Theo, and Blake and Paul. It was probably when I was 13 years old, and I'd been enjoying the richness of our feminine and our masculine, but observing how integral our feminine leaders were showing up, and whether it was just as simple as being fed and giving direction on where to go, or being guided and loved in terms of our songs and our music. And so when I was 14, I'd come to a realization that I had to actually leave the place that I'm from. And so I realized, just because of this toxicity was becoming quite a problem, where social inhibitors were really challenging us as young men growing up, whether it was drugs or delving into drinking or starting to fight and disrupt ourselves as a singular cell. And my single-sex high school at the time, all of these things were being perpetuated, and there was a lot of, you had to fight to get to school, and you had to fight to leave school. And so when I'd go home to our Māori areas and then say, hey, why is this? Why do we have to be educated in a single-sex school? I'd like to go to a co-ed school. And then at the time, in my growing up in the 80s, there was no option for that. So if you couldn't actually go to a school which was only just down the road from yourself, and I found I had to leave. So trusting the spirit, of my guidance from my ancestors, I actually told my family that if I can't stay in school in my city, then I'm going to go somewhere else. And so everyone saw it as, oh, he hates being Māori, he hates his culture, he hates his people. But it was actually just, when you talk about a singular individual thing, Theo, I decided that if I stay in the toxicity, even though I'm starting to listen and be more emotive and not be afraid to cry at a funeral if a relative passes, I decided I need to do this journey, but not forgetting where I came from. So, so I actually moved out of my city, and most people think, oh, your parents moved or your grandparents moved or your family moved, but actually only I moved.
Right.
But it gave me an understanding of how I should interact with my universe, because then once I did sit in a co-ed school, I was able to realize, oh, this feels more like how we should interact with each other, instead of, scrapping to get to school and scrapping to leave school. And that was literally how it was. And so, and I suppose that was a big transition, because, I had to, even now, 30, 40 years on, I'm explaining to my family members, how I didn't leave you because I didn't love all the things you gave me. I left because I knew I would fall into this toxic masculinity of, oh, how hard can you punch? What can you do to prove that you're a man? And so, I would say 14 for me, Theo. And it really gave me more communication, to listen more to the things around me. And then I became more sort of in touch with, hey, if I walk into this place, then I have to expect it's a fighting environment. But then learning how to navigate around those spaces. And if I got hot-headed, then drink some water, simplistically.
Right.
So,
Right. So you, like me, have picked up a lot of cultural elements in the alpha dog games in your environment. And I think that a lot of brothers deal with that. I certainly did. There was pretty high stakes. I grew up in a time where the gang activity was a rites of passage almost. It was like a real question of whether or not, like, you was gonna get put on the set for real, or if you were going to be able to even survive for long enough to accomplish the more positive and healthy aspects of masculinity. Like, there was a looming sense of death, and that you could die at any moment. And making your peace with that was like one of the things that made you kind of hard. And we always wanted to be perceived as, quote, hard, you know what I mean? But that is a toxic element. And I think that the Me Too movement, in great deal, even if you wasn't getting Me Too'd, meaning getting Me Too'd, I mean, like, if somebody wasn't actually calling you out in public or filing a lawsuit against you for like violation, on the male side, there was a lot of men that I think had to ask themselves some hard questions about what this toxicity was, and what does this mean, and what role am I playing in it? And so one thing that I learned from one of my mentors is that looking at negative example after negative example after negative example offers no remedy. Nothing ever learned to fly by watching things fall. There has got to be, if we want to solve this problem, an exemplar of a solution. Something got to look like the right thing for us to actually mimic. Human beings are awesome mimics. We have these mirror neurons. And so I tried to ask myself, well, what's the opposite of toxic masculinity? And I said the most opposite thing that I could think of is the concept of divine masculinity, right? Divine masculinity, a power, is often at the root of what men are seeking in their toxicity, power, whether that is physical dominance, whether it is financial dominance, whether it is to be perceived socially as somebody who has power. But what's the divine element to that? And I'm gonna tell y'all something. I started in my journey when I realized I had to get right. Was I began to meditate on certain powerful masculine animals. This is a weird thing. I never told nobody this. I'm gonna tell y'all this right now. there are these examples of like these powerful masculine animals, species that exhibit sexual dimorphism between male and female, man. And I remember one time I was in the woods of Colorado, I seen this bull elk, man. Ain't nothing like a bull elk. And that thing was just standing there. It wasn't doing nothing but existing in its being, radiating what it was. Didn't have to flex, didn't have to dominate, even though those games, of course, do take place in nature. It was a being thing, right? There is this power that comes from like male lions, that Mufasa energy, Aslan energy. There's there's this regality, right? That we've even based fictional characters on, that male lions exude. Silverback gorillas, man. I'm talking about just this power. It just be sitting there, swole in the mud, but also, even though it's capable of being extremely forceful, there's a beingness in there. And I said, what part of that lives in me, right? Why did the ancient Egyptians have deities that were both beast and man? This union, the great Sphinx, right? This thing that is half lion and half human. What can we learn from how nature or what you would call God shows masculinity through the natural world? And what I found was that I was trying too hard, bro. I'm trying too hard. I learned masculinity socially through dominating others. But there was this way forward in divine masculinity of simply mastering self. And so there's these two warrior archetypes. One is like the UFC fighter, you know what I'm saying? He got the cauliflower ear, bro, tatted up and swole, possibly threatening. And then there's the Kung Fu master, who's like balanced. He can mess you up if he's got to do it, but the energy he exudes is both force and finesse. And I began to look at these archetypes as things that I could aspire towards more in being than doing. And that the most important thing that I had to be in terms of a healthy, positive male is a master of self before I even try to master the universe around me. And I'm wondering from y'all, what are some of your inspirations? Because like there's divinity and good things all around us, but specifically in the vein of masculinity, what for you makes you inspired to perhaps aim your behavior and path towards divine masculinity? Or how would you define it, my brother Paul? Go ahead and break down for me, man.
I love where this conversation is going. I have such deep appreciation for the relationship to the animals, because that's definitely a line of thinking that I have gone down. You know, like I'm supposed to be a lion, I'm supposed to be a bear, you know, and all of those things. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that really my spirit animals are not those. My spirit animals are the owl and the turtle, and that that there's a depth there, there's a wisdom there, there's a carrying forth of message that comes along with that, right? And so when you talk about the importance of being, not so much, not necessarily the doing, but the being, part of that is understanding that that's the power and that's the force that lives inside of me, right? How did I get there though? So you talk about the path and the journey. For me, I will tell you that probably the best thing that I've done in my life is to learn breath work. I've become a breath work facilitator. It's something that actually my wife Esther and I do together. And we do that because we do it from the tradition of the ancient Maya, who are sort of my background, and the Caribbean peoples, where it's a masculine and a feminine energy doing it together. Because as you do it as a group, it's a social event, right? And as you do it as a group, you feel all that energy, and you really need both that masculine, that feminine energy to really manage it all. But one of the things that this has done for me, just breath work in general, has allowed me a kind of connection that I had never felt before. So a connection with myself, a connection to those around me, a connection to something spiritual, a connection to something ancestral to me, that for me has been the source of one tremendous release, like an understanding where this is a place in the space where I can give myself grace, and I can allow basically that armor that I place on top of myself to come off, and let sort of that core inside of me really come out, which is just a source of peace for me. But the other side of it is also, frankly, a source of real peace, in the sense of understanding that I have a place in the world, I have a place in the universe, I have a purpose for it, and that it has a direction for me and who I am, and that the best way that I can do that is exactly by that being of myself, and that understanding who I am and carrying it forth in that way. And so the breath work has been it's been liberating, it's been empowering, it's been something that motivates me to action. And for me, even the next level of doing this as a man is, I don't know how much this translates culturally to all y'all, but it's the importance of being a brown man who does that. And it's this idea that so many of these practices have been gate kept from us in our modern society, when in reality, it's something that comes from us in the first place. So there's a big part of sort of reclamation and decolonization that comes with all of that. So
that's amazing, bro. The breath work, the inner work, the reconnecting towards ancestral traditions as a brown man. That is all inspirational, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Listen, man, we got a lot going on. Brother Blake, would you be able to kind of tell us your inspiration towards being a more divine embodiment of a masculine energy?
My daughter. I think when you have kids, or you have there's nothing more important in the world, and it's a real eye opener to who am I going to be? Who am I going to be for these people? And I think the sense of that, doesn't really. I've never experienced that sort of sense of commitment and responsibility and love in that way. So I'd say, yeah, as far as the inspiration for striving, and yeah, I think she was, when my daughter was born, was the big motivation, actually. Like during that time, had been dealing with drinking a lot, and like avoiding dealing with the PTSD and trauma and stuff that, like, instead of dealing with things, just work, and then shut down. And this realization that I probably won't, live to see her graduate high school if I don't make some changes. And so, like that was a big eye opener, I think, for me.
Man, listen, as a girl dad, I feel you. We can get into that in a second, but thank you for that. Yeah. Nah, ain't nothing like being a girl dad to check you on your masculine energy, for real. So yeah, and I'm a double girl dad. All I got is 2 girls, you know what I'm saying? I don't got no sons. So it's like I'm the masculine template for what they will understand a man to be. And that includes how I treat them and how I treat their mama, So my wife, I ain't got a baby mama. I have a wife. You know what I mean? So yeah, for sure. All right, brother Jason, let me just kind of hear your inspiration when it comes to what do you feel is the embodiment of divine masculinity, because we talked about the toxic, but I feel like the opposite of toxic is divine masculinity. What does that mean to you? How have you tried to embody it?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Theo. As a young Māori boy, I was always playing barefoot. So for me, I did not wear shoes until I was 15, even though I had shoes available to me. But I felt in that sense it was very nature-based in terms of understanding my limitations as a man or a young man growing up, because your feet are very sensory to where you step and where you walk. And so as a very young child, I was able to experience that around our hot springs, around tar seal on road, but also just in terms of how I would interact with the universe. Now, coming back to our masculine and being that, I was being an example of, I'd always be respectful of my environment around me, or try to be, because I'd get told by my grandmothers or grandfathers occasionally, because they'd want to be staunch, standing there going, don't worry, he'll grow up to be a big, tough, strong man. And my grandmothers would always remind me about understanding your limitations. And I feel sometimes as a young man growing up, we don't get to experience those until it's too late. So we've walked into a room, had a big fight, accidentally killed someone, and now we're facing the letter of the law or a system when we didn't intend to do that, but we were just trying to defend ourselves in that moment. I grew up in, I don't know if any of you have heard, the book was called Once Were Warriors, and my uncle was the writer, Alan Duff, and it had a big influence on masculinity in Aotearoa in Australia, in terms of how a man should turn up. And what was really interesting was it was actually my house. So I grew up in that house. And so it became a movie, it became a book. But what I was always telling my brothers, because they were looking at the muscle, the strength, all of this stuff, but not seeing the softer skills which were important around listening, not being afraid, not being vulnerable just because you cry, or wanting to communicate to say, Grandma, Grandpa, I'm lost. I want to be a part of this community, but I don't know where I fit in. And so being barefoot and swimming around rivers, and so I was understanding nature of where I could go and where I couldn't go. And so I felt that really helped me, plus with the wisdoms of our beautiful culture and people. But they also, when they remove from that natural environment, they can fall foul also to social inhibitors. When you're together as a group, drinking, celebrating, then you become a bit disconnected. So, so that was, was a very interesting book. In our family, I remember our family, half of them were split. Half said, no, this book's not going out to the world because this is too personal. This is too close to our heartbeat of what we're trying to represent. And the other half was saying, no, it's going out. It's time. We're not, and this is my granduncles who were part of the Māori battalion. And then there were ones who'd gone to other wars and they come home. They were the fortunate ones who were able to come home, but they came with real understanding of how they should turn up for their communities. And so they were putting down their brute strength and trying to, connect, but often that's not the case in today's, or even in their society at that time. And that's what I drew my inspiration on, from understanding that I can only control my natural environment right in front of me, and then how I interact with that relationship, whether it's a young man who wants to hit back at me. So I'd always come with humility, love, and not being scared to yield, And often in that yielding, then the relationship can change. So it's not two rams hitting each other on the head, and excuse the pun coming from Aotearoa. Yeah, but no, that was part of my learnings as a young man right there.
Understood, bro. Your uncle was the exemplar, and not only because of who he was as a soldier, but who he was as a writer, and that's great. That's great. And I'm just that's kind of where I want to leave off this discussion. what do we do to spread the gospel of this? How do we make sure that the world is better with men, because of men, because of our actions? And I mean, I think that when I talk about divine masculinity as a path of self-mastery, as a path of being not a perfect man, but in control enough of my imperfections to be a reliable man. You see, that's what I think the best thing that I could do to create a more divine masculine energy in the world is to try to be an exemplar of that. And not only try, but there's something to be said about being a success in that. Because I found that the thing that you radiate colors the thing that you're doing anyway. The thing that you radiate, the energy that you bring colors that, right? And the best way that I found to be kind of an exemplar of the divine masculinity that I feel should be in the world, or I think the world is asking for, is to enjoy the path. Is to enjoy the path. I'm somebody who exercises a lot. I work out all the time, and I like emulating that. I like the fact that, like, I share the fact that, like, you know, as a person who is, I will call myself a reformed player, that there's a path for you if that was your way, bro. You know what I mean? Like, living in that, understanding that the thing that is the most masculine thing I could do is to show up in my family day after day as a husband and a father. You know what I mean? I got a following of roughly 160,000 people on social media. And one thing I learned is I could say all the things in the world that sound good with words, but the thing that moves people the most is the example. Is the example. And the most challenging thing about embodying something is that there's a reward in life for faking the funk. You know what I'm saying? Being the thing is hella hard. Social creatures are we. We are beings that get rewarded by other people for appearing a way, but being the way is where the real work is. And I think that that is where I've only been moderately successful when I've enjoyed the journey of growth into a more responsible being, a more divinely masculine being. But I think the way to influence other men in this is to be the exemplar. So that's what I think is the best path for me. But I don't know about you, Brother Paul. How do we spread the gospel of this? How do we get more men who are dealing with their toxicity on the path of being more up and up?
I think I'm with
How
you
would you do
completely.
that?
I'm with you completely. I mean, I think that like this group here is incredibly powerful. I mean, and Blake, I don't know you. I don't know you personally, but just the story of someone who started out in the military and had that experience of going from the military and then becoming a Peace Corps volunteer is a massive transition that I don't think people appreciate necessarily how important that is. And then to go in to take that into your career, into international development, I think is a testament to you and frankly authenticity. And I think that that's where I kind of want to go with this, because for me, the values I talked earlier about a value of wisdom. Wisdom, is that lived experience. Authenticity is that inner core of you, and you showing that as you're outside, right? That peace, that alignment that comes with that. And honestly, I think that a piece of how we need to see ourselves is as the trailblazers. We're the ones who we're here cycle breaking, and the fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that that we have been invited into this conversation is a huge honor. You know what I mean? So this is where we have the chance to be the ones telling others that it's okay. It's okay. You know what I mean? There's times where it's okay and you're going to break down. There's times where it's okay to ask for help. There's times when you need to walk away from that fight. If you have not seen Once We're Warriors, the movie version, I mean, read the book, but I mean, if you get to see the movie, it's really powerful. And there's so many issues there in terms of what colonization has done to our communities, how that has impacted men. And there's a big piece that I remember of it. I mean, and I know it came out in the mid 90s, I think. So it's been a while, but there's a big piece about belonging and masculinity, and actually, Theo, what you were talking about, a lot of like the stuff that you see from the gangs. Like, I've done a good amount of work in Haiti where the gangs have taken over. And so much of it is because men need a place to belong. So I think a big piece of what we need to do and what I think we are doing, but if we could somehow scale these places for men to feel like they belong, I think that would go a long way towards creating peace and alignment and authenticity with so many of these guys who are just really calling out for it and don't really have a place to take that energy.
That's real talk, brother. Thank you very much, man. Our brother Blake, I'll get this word out and make sure that other men get on board, bro.
So I think something that's just a key in our society right now is our need for conversation, our need for third spaces that take us outside of our day-to-day. I like the ideas of longhouses and kivas and those sacred spaces that we had in our history that we don't have now. I think now what that might look like is a coffee shop. It might look like a place where we get together and we talk about guy things, or that we talk about community things, or we talk about business ideas, or we talk about we find our niches, or we find our areas where we have common ground, and that there is room to build, as opposed to what I think generally gets termed as masculinity is just constant competition. And honestly, I'm tired. I don't want to compete. I want to see us all make it. And how do we do that? And that's kind of, I guess the thing to me is that, and I don't think you can really have a divine masculine without exploring the divine feminine as well. So I think that there's that need for, it's always good, we get to have these kind of conversations just, with guys, but we're not having the healthy conversations with with women either. And we need to, figure out how that works as well, and just seeing each other as people, before anything else. And so it's tough. It's complex, and we're dealing with a lot of voices in our lives and a lot of distractions. So what does the future look like when we set time for our community? What does showing up for community actually look like? How do we establish that foundation to build from? Maybe another conversation there.
Maybe so. This is an ongoing thing because it's an ongoing journey. Thank you for that, brother Blake. Yeah, Jason. I want to know how you feel like we can get more men on board, at least to have the conversation and to kind of break the spell of toxic masculinity in the world.
Yeah, from my small contribution to the wonderful discussion, when we do have that awareness around the real strength doesn't lie in dominance, but it comes with love or aroha, manakitanga, generosity within the spaces, and the audacious humility to co-create with your brothers to brother, with your brother to sister, and then with your brothers with nature for themselves. So they start to become more aware of all the elements that can contribute to the health of themselves, not just how we've been socially constructed to think, Theo and Paul, they lift a lot of heavy things for us, so they're real men. Jason, Blake, they can't lift anything, so they're not useful to our constellation. And I think that more that we just start to understand our limitations and come together as brothers and brothers, sisters and sisters, brothers with nature and nature with the brothers, so they can process, in their own way. So then when they do find their constellation, they understand, hey, we do have something to offer in this wonderful world we live on. And so that takes time, but there to win it. But first comes awareness, then with awareness comes love and connection, and with love and connection, then you start to get healing. So, and I'm just humbled to be a part of this conversation with our brothers here, and our ancestors have put us here for a reason, to contribute and not to just stop here, but in our ways to turn up, as you have been doing, Theo, as you do, Paul, and as you are, Blake. And so I'm very humbled to be a part of this important dialogue.
That's what's up, man. Brother Jason, thank you. And I'm going to just conclude by saying this. A word on Harmony Voices. One thing I asked was for them to pick the men. For them to pick the men to have this conversation with. Because sometimes brothers don't always know who the women feel safest with and around. I realized that I didn't even know a lot of my homeboys because I didn't know how they treated their women. I didn't even know a lot of my homeboys because I didn't know how women felt around them, how children felt around them. It took some abrupt moments and alarming incidences for me to bring that to my attention. So I was like, so the fact that the sisters chose y'all means that like there's something authentic in the vibe, because women can assess men in a way that men can't really assess. We're good at sizing dudes up when it comes to like conflict. We're good at sizing dudes up when it comes to the alpha dog games, but women will size you up in terms of your integrity and your authenticity real quick. And that is a power that is one of the true measures of who you are as a man. So when I said, you pick them, sis, because I may think somebody healthy that y'all be like, mm-mm. So I think that it is an honor to be chosen by the divine feminine that is embodied in this organization, Harmony Voices. And me being a girl dad, I think the universe set it up that way so that, even if I do have a son, I done figured out how to love a child without trying to put that masculine nurture. I know if I had a son first, man, I'd be trying to get him to chop wood as soon as he came out. You know what I mean? And get him doing push-ups. And that was the way in which I felt that I was raised. That wasn't even really the way that I was raised, but it's the way that I felt that I was raised. So we're here with Cycle Breakers. And I'm thankful that we're beginning this conversation, y'all. This is just the start. And with the blessing of Harmony Voices and the sisters in our community, there will be more. And I appreciate all of y'all, our brother Paul, our brother Blake, our brother Jason, and Harmony Voices for putting this together. I'm Peter Wilson, and we're going to have this conversation next time if we are allowed to. Appreciate y'all. Peace.
Kia ora, Kia ora, Paul.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Blake.
Wow. That was amazing.
That was powerful. As they were all speaking, I kept thinking how life is not meant to be conceptual. It's experiential. When I get into that conceptual world, I am projecting a whole lot, and much of it just might not be true. So I might be making assumptions on what you were saying or why you were saying or how you are behaving and why you are behaving towards me.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Male and female, and being in touch with especially with the nature of the world today, and every trigger. You watch the media, you listen to the media, you experience everyday life. And for me, as a woman of color, I get to be triggered on a regular basis. And I find that when I get triggered, today, didn't used to be like this, but today I get more in touch with that what we consider that masculine energy, that more aggressive kind of, I'm ready to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when I'm in the experiential part of life, I am in the moment. And in the moment, when I realize what is happening and my participation, I go back to that natural space of who I am and why I am as a female. And what is my contribution going to be in this moment?
Yeah.
But listening to Theo, to Paul, to Blake, to Jason, it's been a long time since I've sat down listening to a conversation kind of as the outsider and be absolutely moved to tears at the power behind the energy, the emotion, the vulnerability, and integrity that was displayed here today.
Yeah, it was transformational just to listen. And I'm really left with the last thing that Theo said. I've been moderately successful when I've enjoyed the journey of growth. And I feel like there's so much wisdom in remembering that we are all laboring together to create this, I don't know, I want to say more than balance, but this opportunity for us to be fully embodied humans and to not be limited to some simplistic idea about our gender or our race or our aspirations, and instead to, like you said, really be in the experience of being human and in the partnership of relationship with one another. And I feel like that journey of growth is such a great way to explain how we can do this together without trying to get it right or be perfect or be, a good kind of whatever it is. Just be in this together and support each other in that, in our individual journeys and our collective journey of growth.
Yeah. And it really hit me when Jason made mention to basically, don't be afraid to yield.
Yeah.
In that moment, you don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to be in that top dog, I am right space. Don't be afraid to yield. Yeah. It's
good lessons, really good lessons.
Do that. And as Paul spoke about that breath, breath is important.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to have more of these kind of shows. We need more of this dialogue.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And for those of you who are out there and you have an interest in participating in some way, shape, or form, please let us know.
Until next time.
Thank you again for joining us at Her Many Voices Gaia Gossip. Remember, whatever you do for another, you do for yourself. For more information, head over to hermanyvoices.org to learn more about other programs and get involved. From all of us at Gaia Gossip and Her Many Voices Foundation, thank you, and until next time.